Okay, did you see what just happened? Leadership. He followed me up here. That's leadership. Leadership requires following. If nobody's following you, you're just taking a walk. I have never met this guy before in my life. His name is Ian. We just met back there, and I cast a vision. I said, Ian, I need your help, and I'll make it worth your while if you'll give me some help. And he said, what do I got to do? I said, you got to come up to the front with me. He says, then what do I got to do? I said, you don't have to do much. It's going to be easy, and it's going to be well worth your while. Ian, tell us about yourself.
My name is Ian Koch. I'm 25 years old. This is the first meeting I've ever been to. I'm very fresh into real estate. I just started a real estate company last week, actually. So I'm kind of excited just to get some knowledge and insight and meet new people, hopefully.
Okay, and he was willing to do what I asked. So I have something for you here, Ian. Here's something, and there's some money in there to buy you a couple of drinks. And here's a pen with my name and phone number on it. If I can ever help you, let me know.
Oh, okay. I appreciate you.
So that's a picture of leadership. Leadership is when you go somewhere and someone follows you there because you've cast a vision. You're on a mission. You're actually going to do something. And they see some reason in you because of credibility or integrity or something that they're willing to follow. Again, if nobody's following you, you're merely taking a walk. I want to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm Josh's dad. That's probably the most important thing. My wife, Nikki, is here. Nikki, you want to stand up? That's Josh's mom. He's got her features and my fixtures. Josh said I should share a little bit about myself and what I do. Well, I was an entrepreneur at the ripe old age of 8 years old in the city of Chicago. I shined shoes on the south side in bars. And I was a rich 8-year-old. And learned a lot, learned how to size up customers, how to do some marketing. By the time I was 14, I was still shining shoes. And I broke my leg in gymnastics at school. And I had to use crutches. So a buddy of mine would carry my shoeshine box, and revenue shot up like crazy because people felt sorry for me. So long after the leg healed, I continued to use the crutches and let my buddy carry the shoeshine box. I don't know if that was ethical, but it was leadership. And it was marketing. I've got to give John Maxwell credit for most of what I'm going to tell you tonight. I've been involved in management since I started my career. I went to college to be a high school teacher. There were no teaching jobs, so I got into the janitorial business, and I spent most of my career in the janitorial business, running janitorial companies or hospital housekeeping departments or cleaning in some way or the other. And I've always studied John Maxwell. I'm enamored with leadership. I think everything in the world rises and falls on leadership. Show me a good leader, and I'll show you a good organization. Show me a good father, and I'll show you a good family. Leadership impacts every area of our lives, and the better you are at leadership, the farther you're going to go. I just gave you a little example of some of the components of leadership in this little deal that we did with Ian. What I want to do later is talk more about mission, vision, values, and purpose. Then I want to help you define leadership a little bit. We'll talk about some definitions of leadership, and I'll give you an example of leadership that I use with my wife. And then Then I'm going to review management and leadership because I think a lot of people use those terms interchangeably, and I hate it. A lot of other people don't mind it, but I think it's bad to use management and leadership and mean the same thing because they're two distinct, different things. and I'll try to go over some of that with you. We'll talk a little bit about the tensions in leadership. Leadership, I think, is a high and holy calling. Transforming people and helping people go where they would never have gone otherwise is a high and holy calling. And then after I talk about the tensions in leadership, I'll talk a little bit about the 5 levels of leadership. Now, I've got some outlines of what I'm going to be talking about, and I've made 50 copies, so if you want a copy of that afterwards, you're welcome to take that with you. So let me get rolling. Ian followed me up here. Ian, did you plan to get on the stage, get up here in the front whenever you came tonight? He didn't plan that, so Ian did something that he was not planning to do. Okay, that's one function of leadership, is helping people get or do something that they would not otherwise get or do. If they were going to do it anyway, then you're not leading, you're just walking alongside them. He didn't want to be on the stage, he didn't want to come to the front, but he did. He didn't really, I don't think he came here really wanting to talk to you guys, but he did. I led, he followed. He joined me on a journey. Okay. I had a mission, I shared the mission with him, I shared a vision. I said, it's going to be worth your while, I'll make sure of that, and it won't hurt you. And he bought it. So I want to talk a little bit about some components that are necessary for leadership. First of all, mission. Mission is what we're called to. You know, mission is what we're going to do. It answers the question, what? You know, what are you about? What is your mission in life? Vision is where are we going? When I owned my company, my mission was to conduct business honestly, help people grow, provide excellent service, and grow and remain profitable. Our vision was to be the premier cleaning service in Lincoln and Lancaster County. I wanted people to talk about ServiceMaster like they talked about Kleenex. You know, people never say, do you have any facial tissue? They say, do you have a Kleenex? Well, Kleenex is a brand name, not a product name. It's actually facial tissue. So we had a vision, we had a mission, we had values, how we were going to do our business. We were going to honor God in all we did. We were going to help people develop. We were going to grow profitably. And we had a purpose why we were doing what we were doing. I used to tell my clients, we don't do cleaning through people, we do people through cleaning. So the purpose of our business was to help marginally employable people become better than they were when they started. And I think we accomplished that to some extent. Leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. Everybody leads somebody, and everybody is led by somebody, okay? It's just a matter of how proficient you want to be, how excellent you want to be at it, and how much time you want to spend knowing it, learning it. If everything rises and falls, there's 2 truths about leadership. One is it's the most important thing in the world. Everything rises and falls on it. The second truth is it can be learned. It is not something you're born with or not. You can learn to lead. And that's the really good part about leadership, is if you're willing to put the time and energy into it, you can learn to be a leader. And your success will be determined by your ability to lead ultimately. Here's something that Tom Landry said. He said, my job is to get a group of men to do what they don't want to do so they can achieve what they've wanted their entire lives. Think about it. Football players have to work like crazy and do things that aren't very comfortable in order to achieve what they've always wanted. You know, that famous ring for the Super Bowl. I want to tell you a little simple leadership story that me and my wife had. We were in Ireland. We went there for a CBMC convention, I guess a couple years ago. And if you want to go to Belfast in Northern Ireland, you have to fly into Dublin in Southern Ireland, and you've got to take some other transportation to get to Northern Ireland because they don't have an airport. So when we got there, it was raining, and we were in a hurry, so we just grabbed the first bus we could get to go to Belfast. And we rode the bus to Belfast, and I got to tell you, the trip in 2 to 3 hours, but the trip from Dublin to Belfast is pretty doggone boring. Their interstates have green and white signs just like ours. And there's traffic just like us, and you're on a bus that's very much like a Greyhound bus, nothing special, and it's kind of boring. And so we spent a week in Ireland and up in Belfast, and we were coming back, and I said, let's take the train. And she says, nah, let's not take the train. Let's take a bus. I said, we took a bus here, let's take a train back. She said, no, let's take the bus. The bus station's right across the street. We were staying at a hotel right across from the main bus terminal. I said, so let's go get a bus to the train station and take the train. And she said, I don't want to take a train. I said, come on, let's take the train. So I influenced her. We took the bus to the train station, we got on the train, and we took off for Dublin. And we're sitting there, and we had a table about this wide. She had a chair facing me, I had a chair facing her, and we had a big window that we could see out of. And the train takes off, we're out of the city pretty soon, and it's these beautiful green pastures and rolling hills. And you could see the sheep grazing in the hills. You could see the ocean waves crashing against the shore. And then here comes the food cart, and they got wine and cheese and chips and soda, and she gets a glass of wine, and I get a can of Coke and a bag of chips, and we're sitting there and we're enjoying this. And I said, Nikki, you know, I'm really glad you forced me to take a train. Influence. The difference between management and leadership, again, as I said, this is a pet peeve of mine, so anytime I talk, I got to talk about it. People use the terms interchangeably. I'm going to manage people. I'll tell you what, I am living proof that people are not manageable. My parents tried to manage me. The police tried to manage me. The United States military tried to manage me. Teachers tried to manage me. Bosses tried to manage me. I am not manageable. But I will follow a great leader off of a cliff. And I think that's the reality of most people. Anytime people have been managed, they will tell you that they work for a micromanager, okay? Because people are not manageable. We can manage things, but we have to lead people. Because people think, things don't. So here's some differences. Management is getting people to do what needs to be done. Leadership is getting people to want to do what needs to be done. There's a big difference there. Leadership helps people want to do it. Ian ended up wanting to come up here when he heard the vision that it was going to be worth it. Managers push, leaders pull. Managers command, leaders communicate. Management is concerned with doing things right. Leadership is concerned with doing the right things. Doesn't matter if you do them right or wrong. If you're doing the wrong thing in the right way, it's still the wrong thing. But managers follow a process. Managers surrender to the context. Leaders want to conquer the context. You know, the leaders really showed up through COVID. Leaders started figuring it out. You know, the context all changed. And so leadership started figuring out ways to get around it, ways to make things happen in spite of the fact that we can't get within 6 feet of people. We got to wear a mask. We got to do all this other stuff. Leadership kicked in and figured out ways to get things done. Managers administer. Leaders innovate. Managers like policies and procedures that they can plug in. Leaders freewheel it and get it done. Management is a copy. Leadership is an original. Management maintains. Leadership develops. Management focuses on systems and structure. Leadership focuses on people. Now, I don't want to leave you with the idea that management is bad and leadership is good, because that's not what I'm saying. Every leader needs to understand management, and managers should be trying to become better leaders. In my business here in ServiceMaster in Lincoln, we had 180 employees. We were cleaning about 80 properties, and we had 6 managers managing different areas of the city. and we were measuring quality. We were doing payroll for 180 employees. We were, measuring budgets for all 6 of the managers. They were all competing on budget and quality. And I had a guy in my office named Jim who kept track of all that. And every pay period, he would give me a stack of paper, maybe a half-inch thick, that would tell me every building we cleaned, what our budget was, how far we were off budget or on budget. It was in red if we were over. Every management cluster, how the manager was doing in terms of his finances, in terms of his quality, his customer reviews, and his turnover of his employees. And so I could look literally at this stack of paper and know everything I needed to do to make good decisions in the business. He was a manager. He managed the data really, really well, but it provided me, the leader, with the information I needed to make the decisions that needed to be made. So both are necessary. And you run into the issue of people versus process with leadership. I used an example with my managers where I would say, they would make a big deal out of, we don't have the right equipment, we don't have enough training, we don't have this, we don't have that. And I would say, look, I'll give you 10 people, you train them as long as you want, give them all the products and all the equipment that you think they need, and you put them in a building. If they're unmotivated people, if they haven't been led effectively, you put those people in a building. I'll take 10 highly effective, well-led people with very minimal supplies and equipment and put them in a building. My building will be cleaner. Because the people often can outweigh the process. I always used to say 80% of cleaning is water and a rag. If you can get the 2 things going, you can get a lot of cleaning done. But if you're waiting for the right stuff, you may wait forever. Manager relies on control. Leaders try to instill trust. Managers like to control people. That's what management is. Management is trying to control things. Leadership is inspiring. Management takes a short-range view. We've got to get through the week. We've got to get through the pay period. We've got to get through the quarter. Leadership takes a long view. Who is my diamond in the rough? Of all the people that I have in my organization, who's going to be the person that rises to the top in the long run? Who can I count on in a pinch? Leaders are always thinking about, like I said earlier, you love everyone, but you spend your time on the people that are going to move, that are going to follow, that are going to do something, that are going to progress. And a leader's always thinking long term, who's going to take my place? Who's going to take over and take charge of this? Managers have their eyes on the bottom line. Leaders have their eyes on the horizon. Managers are counting the nickels at the bottom. Leaders are saying, where are we going? When's our next big deal? When's our next opportunity? Managers accept the status quo. Leaders challenge the status quo. Managers say, this is the way we've always done things. We got to keep doing them this way. Leaders say, why? Why don't we try a new way? Why don't we try doing something different? Managers are good soldiers, and you need them. Jim was a great soldier in our business. He did the reports every pay period like clockwork, and they were accurate and well worth the trouble and gave me everything I needed. Leaders, on the other hand, are their own person. If you're taking a trip and you got a bus and you got a bunch of followers and you say, okay, get on the bus, they get on the bus. If you've got a group of leaders and you say, okay, everybody get on the bus, they say, well, wait a second, where are we going? How long is it going to take? What seat do I get? Are we going to stop on the way? Is there a bathroom on the bus? You got any food on the bus? When are we coming back? Leaders have 1,000 questions. Followers just look for a line to get in. Let's get on the bus. So, managers handle things. They keep things going. Leadership goes places, creating momentum. Managers try to make sure that everything gets done, and leaders try to create momentum. there's a law in the 21 laws of irrefutable, 21 irrefutable laws of leadership that John Maxwell wrote. It's called the law of the Big Mo. And the law of the Big Mo essentially says momentum is a leader's best friend. When you have momentum, you look smarter than you are, and life becomes much easier than it should be, and nothing hurts. When you lose momentum, you look stupider than you actually are, everything hurts, and nothing seems to go right. So a leader's job is to develop and maintain and maximize momentum. And if you watch football, I think this past weekend we lost momentum somewhere along the line. And you lose when you lose momentum. Everything seems to go wrong. And that's the same thing in business. Management, tightly linked to the organization. Managers need to be in an organization structure with some commitment, authority, and some power, and some job responsibilities, etc. Leaders, on the other hand, may not have an organization. The one that comes to mind for me is Jesus Christ. No church, no organization, no real plan, just kind of walking around doing his thing for 3 years and changed the world. Management thinks maintenance. Leaders think renewal. Management focuses on objectives, and leaders deal with conflicting requirements. Leadership deals with the conflicting requirements of different interest groups, for example, the customer and the employee. I used to say the trick in my business was our customers were usually pretty high-level people running big buildings, and they would have master's or doctorate degrees or whatever, and they were the people I would talk to, but then our employees were barely employable. And going between the two, they both see things differently, and my job for 20, 30 years was just defining clean. Because what I saw as clean, my employees thought they had a different definition of clean. If there was no obvious stuff laying on the floor, it was clean. They didn't do the fine dusting and stuff. So, but my customers had real expectations. Managers focus on measurables. Leaders focus on intangibles, vision, values, etc. Managers are trying to create consistent performance. Leaders make new things happen on the edge. For me, probably one of the biggest leadership tests of my career was I worked for ServiceMaster Corporation for 12 years, and during that 12-year time period, I visited and got intimately involved with 27 different hospitals. But the last 2 years of my career, I stayed at one hospital in London, England, at London Bridge Station, Guy's Hospital. And Maggie Thatcher brought ServiceMaster to the UK to change the National Health Service. And the National Health Service in Britain is a behemoth of an organization. If you took 1-pound coins and stacked them on top of each other, the amount of 1-pound coins it takes to run the National Health Service of Great Britain would go to the moon and back 3.5 times. I mean, their budget is phenomenal. At the time I was there, it was the biggest financial organization in the world. That's how much money they spend on the National Health Service. And it was started right after World War II for the purpose of creating jobs, and it did a good job of creating jobs, but it wasn't very efficient. So I got the short straw and got the chance to go to London to start our very first hospital in London, England, Guy's Hospital. It was a $7 million contract with 486 employees. And they had they had 5 trade unions. There were 25 managers there, and they were all unionized managers. So I immediately looked for a half a dozen managers I could bring from the U.S., otherwise I could never get anything done. And they had been doing the way they do cleaning ever since World War II. I mean, they did it the same way, and their attitude was, America is a couple hundred years old. What are you going to teach us? We've been around a lot longer than you. You ain't go home. So I spent all of my life while I was in London in union grievances and dealing with that, and the other people had to figure out how to get the hospital clean. But it was a leadership challenge because it was on the edge. Nobody had ever did what I did before, and nobody's done it since. We lost the contract. I got booted out after 2 years, but we lost the contract the year following that, and there's not been another one since then. Maggie Thatcher's no longer in office, and they're back to doing it the way they did. See, we were there to create change, and the reason why England did what they did the way they did was because they've always done it that way. And since they've always done it that way, it must be the right way. But that's what leadership does. So that's the difference between management and leadership, and I have one of these sheets for you if you want one after we're done. There's tension in leadership. That's why so few people get involved in it. You know, one of the things I hear from a lot of people, especially in your real estate business, is I don't want employees. Whatever I do, I don't want employees. But if you have subcontractors, if you have peers, if you have tenants, you need to be able to influence people. Sooner or later, in every economic thing you're going to do, you're going to have to come across the need to influence people. And influencing people is leadership. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. If you can't influence people, you won't be very successful. Your success will be limited by your ability to lead. Promise you. There's tension in leadership. Everything rises and falls on leadership. You're close to people, but you got to be in the front. And if you're too far in the front, you're the enemy. You know, I had it broken down to me one time. If you're 4 paces ahead, you're the enemy. If you're 2 paces ahead, you're leading. Okay? Because you can get so far in the front of your team that you're no longer part of the team. You become the enemy. Leaders see before and more. Don't ask me why, but it seems to me that whenever you've practiced leadership and you've worked in leadership and you've learned leadership, you begin to see more and before others do. I always use an example of perspective. If you imagine you've got a beach ball and you're looking, and I'm holding it, and you're looking at your side, and I'm looking at my side, and I tell you, oh, I see red, green, and purple, and you say, no, I see red, I see blue, yellow, and green. And I say, well, it's red, yellow, and purple, and you say, no, it's blue, red, and green, or whatever. If I turn the beach ball, then we know what each other saw, and we can see it. And leaders' jobs is to turn that beach ball. Okay, it's to share perspective, and it's to help other people see what they're not seeing. And that way you can lead. So you look at the bigger picture, and you look at the horizon instead of what's immediately in front of you. Leaders have to love people. That's another reason why a lot of people don't want to lead. You've got to love people, but you can't spend all of your time with losers. You've got to love everyone, but you've got to spend time with people that are willing to grow. You've got to spend time with people that are willing to follow. You've got to spend time with people that can potentially replace you. Leaders have to balance caring and candor. Another reason why people don't want to lead is because they don't want to be honest with folks. They don't want to say you're not cutting it. They don't want to say you're off the team. You know, they don't want to have to tell you that, you know, of the last 5 things you did, 4 of them are not moving the dial. You know, we need to do more of the 5th thing. You know, we need to do more of that. But at the same time, you've got to care about people deeply. You've got to care, and you've got to be willing to have the hard conversations. The first responsibility of a leader is to define reality. You know, turn the beach ball. Let people see the whole picture. One of the tensions of leadership is you have to have an understanding to avoid a misunderstanding. You know, one of the things I did during my career with ServiceMaster is I developed new managers. I was a development coordinator, and ServiceMaster had a great way of building leadership. my first assignment with ServiceMaster was a small 150-bed nursing home on the north side of Chicago. It was a Orthodox Jewish nursing home, and that's where I met this lovely lady sitting over here. And that was my very first assignment. I had 13 employees. I was fresh out of college, and I had worked a little bit in the janitorial business, and then I got a job with ServiceMaster running housekeeping. At that place, I ran housekeeping, laundry, and security with 13 employees. And what ServiceMaster did was they would take a manager that's this big, and they put him in a responsibility this big, and then when he grew to handle that responsibility, they'd move him to a bigger place. So I started at that nursing home. I went to an acute care hospital on the south side, inner city place. Then I went to another hospital where I was an assistant manager. Then I ended up starting Cook County Hospital in Chicago. And then I became a startup engineer and a troubleshooter and saved a bunch of hospitals. And then I went to England to start our business in the UK. And as I did that, it gave me an opportunity to practice leadership and reflect. You know, people say that experience is your best teacher. It's not. It's absolutely not. I don't know how many of you know this, and I probably am not supposed to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm a recovering alcoholic. And I drank for 25 years and drank pretty hard and lost a bunch of things because of drinking. But I never learned anything. I had a lot of bad experience drinking, but I never learned anything until somebody sat me down for 29 days and said, let's reflect and examine your experience. And it was through the reflection and the examining of the experience that I learned that drinking's not for me. Okay? And leadership is the same way. Each time I traveled from one hospital to the next or one level of responsibility to the next, I had an opportunity to reflect on what worked, what didn't work, and what do I want to do different in this new place, because I got new people who don't know me. You know, they don't know if I'm a good guy or bad guy. And I used to tell managers, always start out by the book. Start out with high expectations. If people are really working hard and they're really performing, you can always chill out. But if you start easy, it's hard to get tough after that. You can't raise the expectation if you've already started out down here. Start up here with expectations. And to me, that's a significant leadership rule. One of the tensions is relationships versus mission. You know, leadership always happens in a dual context. Relationship with people and mission for the organization. And often those things get in cross purposes. And as we get into the 5 levels of leadership, I'll pinpoint for you right where that happens most of the time. But you got to care about people, but you've also got to achieve the mission. You wouldn't be in leadership if it wasn't for the mission. Okay? And then along the same lines, it's people versus productivity. You know, you got to care about people and you got to love people, but you also got to get the job done, ultimately. 3 vital components in leadership. First of all, it's a calling. Your career is what you're paid to do. Your calling is what you're made to do, okay? It's what God built you for. The second thing is character. You got to mean what you say and say what you mean and do what you said you'd do on time with a smile. And then competence. You know, I love it. I heard a leader say, I don't know where I'm going, but come with me and follow me anyway. You know, why do I want to follow you if you don't know where you're going? And if you look like you don't know where you're going, I'm out. Leadership is most studied and most misunderstood topic ever. You know, if you go to the bookstore, you'll find all kinds of books on leadership, and a lot of people study leadership, but it's still the most understood discipline. How do you know if you've been a good leader? As far as I know, there's only one way to know, and that's look at your successor. I personally feel like my biggest testament to my leadership in my business is the fact that the guy who bought it has kept it at the level it was at and taken it further. It didn't miss a beat when I left. You know, a lot of employees think if they left the company would fall completely apart, and they get this grandiosity idea that, that they're the pivotal kingpin in the development of their business, and if their boss ever fired them, he wouldn't be able to keep the company running. I sold my business, and it's still running today, and they've got more and more employees than I had, and I feel like that's a testament to my ability to lead and develop other people. So the 5 levels of leadership. Why 5 levels of leadership? Well, it provides a clear picture of leadership. If you think about these levels and you take them with you, it'll help you think through where you're at and where your people are at. It defines leading as a verb, not a noun. Leadership is an action, not a position. The stories are all old about people who are in leadership positions who really can't lead. Nobody's following them. They just have this office. They have the corner office with the big window, but they're not leading. It breaks down leadership in understandable steps. Hopefully when you leave here tonight, you'll have at least a fairly good picture of 5 steps that you go through when you're talking about leadership. It provides a game plan for leadership development. If you're at level 1, you'll be able to see what level 2 looks like and what it takes to go from level 1 to level 2. It aligns leadership practice, principles, and values. There's some insights about the 5 levels. You can move up a level but never leave the previous one. So it's going to look like a pyramid, and it's going to look like steps that you go up, but you're never going to leave one. You're always going to have all those under your belt as you continue to progress. You're not at the same level with every person. If you've got a half a dozen people, you may be at different levels with each of them. You may be at level 1 with some people. For example, the guy you hired last night, you're at level 1, okay, with him. You may be at level 4 with other people. The higher you go, the easier it is to lead. One of the things I'm going to hammer on is that each of these levels is hard fought. It's hard to go from level 1 to level 2. It's even harder to go from level 2 to level 3. And it's still even tougher to go from level 3 to level 4. And going from level 4 to level 5, you can't even do it on your own. You need a lot of help to get from level 4 to level 5. But leadership becomes easier every time you go up a level. So leadership at level 2 is easier than it was at level 1. And leadership at level 3 is easier than it was at level 2. So it's harder to win the level, but it's easier to lead after you get there. So the higher you go, the more time and commitment required to win a level. So the more time it'll take to go from level 3 to level 4 than it did to go from level 2 to level 3. It takes more time and commitment to go from each one to the next. Moving up levels takes time. It's slow. Moving down is easy. And you can go from level 4 to level 1 in one move with no problem. The higher you go, the greater the return. Not only is it easier to lead, but the greater the return on your leadership you'll have as you go up in the levels. Moving farther up always requires further personal growth. You will not become a leader, a better leader, by accident. If you're not intentional about your growth as a leader, you will not become a better leader. You won't fall into better leadership. Moving farther up always requires further personal development. Growing as a leader requires a combination of intentional growth and leadership experience. So in my leadership career, I've read a lot of books, I've gone to a lot of seminars, I've talked to a lot of people. I had the pleasure of going to John Maxwell's house, sitting in his thinking chair, looking at his 3-ring binder of the next book he was writing, and visiting with his pilot and his secretary, and seeing his family. And he's been mentoring me since probably 1980 something, And he didn't even know it until 2011, whenever I became part of the John Maxwell team. So I've studied a lot, and I've had a lot of experience. Not climbing the levels limits you and your people. You know, if you own a business and you've got people working for you, you want to become a better leader, if not for yourself, for them. Because they will be limited and your business will be limited by your growth. The first law of the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership is the law of the lid. And it says that you are the lid on the growth of your organization. So if you're a 4, your organization will never be a 5. If you want your organization to be a 5, you've got to become a 6. You've got to grow in order for the organization to grow. When you change positions or organizations, you seldom stay at the same level. Again, if you change all your people or you change positions, you probably won't be at the same level. The other thing is you can't climb the levels alone. You need help. So here are the 5 levels, and I'm going to run through this. Josh has organized a lunch and learn. If you want to go deeper into the 5 levels, we can do that on the 21st of this month, and I think Josh will tell you about that after I'm finished. But first level is the position level. Josh, you want to put it up there? Okay, the position level. Position level is based on rights, and people follow you because they have to. Everybody starts at the position level. Wherever you start in leadership, you start at the position level. Am I in you guys' way? Oops. Everybody's taking pictures, so. Anyway, you showed potential, so the boss gave you the position of leader. Or in a lot of your cases, you started the business. You know, you put up the cash to buy the rental or to buy the flip or whatever, so you're the leader because you put the cash in, and so now you're the boss. You're at the position level. I like to talk about Fat Jack's hamburger stand, okay? I've been working there, and I'm showing some potential. I come to work on time. I wear my uniform every day. I'm well-groomed. I'm nice to the customers. So the boss comes over and says, hey, I'm going to let you be the supervisor. So he gives me a gold badge. Everybody else got a red badge, okay? Or he gives me a pink shirt. They all got blue shirts, whatever. But he signifies that I'm now the man. I'm now in charge, so I've got a position. I have the right to lead, all right? So I get to tell people what to do. And I exercise my right to lead by saying, you make the fries, you make the burgers, you sweep the floor, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I'm handing out orders, and I'm telling people what to do. And employees at that point may tell their friends that, you know, he's not very cool. I don't like him. I don't like his attitude. He kind of just barn bosses us, but he's got the gold badge. I've got the red badge. I've got to do what he says or I could get fired. So they follow because they have to. They really don't want to. Now, leadership at the position level is where everybody starts. And the good side of that is you got a place to start, you got some potential, and you have an opportunity. It's the terrible place to lead from. Leadership is hard. You can only lead what you can see. I mean, the guy you told to mop the floor, as soon as you go back to the office and start doing paperwork, he leans the mop against the wall, and he goes about it having a good time with his coworkers and whatever. You know, you can only manage what you can see, and you can only lead what you can touch. So it's a terrible, terrible place to lead from. So my advice is get out of the position level as quick as you can. And the only place to go if you're going to remain in leadership is level 2. And level 2 is the permission level, and it's based on relationships. And that's where you start to take an active interest in the people that are working there. You begin to talk to them about who they are, what makes them tick, what their values are. You begin to develop a relationship and let them know that you care about them. And leadership becomes easier, but because you've been the positional guy, you got the gold badge. It's not easy to get people to open up. It's not easy to develop those relationships, and you really have to take responsibility for the relationship. They're not going to come flocking to you. You have to be the one to reach out. You have to be the one to seek the relationship, and you've got to demonstrate the love that you have for them, that you're willing to work with them and you're willing to care about them, and that you do care about them. So the permission level is the second level, and leadership will become a little bit easier when you get to the second level. People will begin to do things. Now, whenever they talk to their friends, they say, well, you know, he's got the gold badge, I got the red badge, but he's cool. You know, we get along. I think he really cares about me, and I don't mind him being the boss because we're tight. We're tight. You know, he's a good guy. So things get easier, and you don't have to now watch the guy mop the floor to make sure the floor is being mopped, because he feels a little more like he's part of the team and he cares a little bit more. And level 2 leadership can last a long, long time, and those relationships can continue to be fostered. Then you start to level 3. Level 3 is the production level, and it's based on results. And this is where you as the leader leverage the relationship. Okay? You still got hamburgers to make. You still got customers to serve. You still got a store to keep clean. You've still got responsibilities. You've got a mission, and you've got to maximize the production for the sake of the mission. And this is where some of those relationships may falter. People that had a good relationship with you, when you start focusing on production, may fall out. They may drop out. They may say, wait a minute, I thought we were homies. You know, now you're cracking on me because I'm not mopping good enough, or you're cracking on me because the fries are cold, or whatever. You know, here I thought we had a thing, you know, but now you're all about production. You're not about us anymore. So that's a potential problem. And it's hard to go from level 2 to level 3. This is probably one of the hardest transitions to make, but it's required, because ultimately you work for the hamburger store, and your job is to make sure that the customers are taken care of, the store is clean, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You have to be competent at leading the people to the mission. So, but leadership becomes easier once you get it going. Once you get the production thing going, leadership becomes easier. And remember, you're at different levels with different people. So that guy that quit because he thought you were his friend, and now he don't think you're his friend, so he quit. Now you got a new employee starting, and guess what? You're at level 1 with that new employee. You may be at level 3 with a couple of employees. You may still be at level 2 with a couple of employees, but now that new guy, you got the gold badge, he's got the red badge. Now, whenever your good employees that are responding to your leadership talk to their friends, they would say something like, well, you know, he's got the gold badge, I got the red badge, I got to do what he says because he's the boss. But we have a good relationship. And besides that, this guy's a producer. He knows how to make this hamburger stand run. We're out producing the other shifts. The store's cleaner. Our inspections are always great. We are part of a winning team. And I really like his leadership, because he really knows what's going on in this organization, and he knows how to do it, and he teaches us. You know, and we're the all-stars of the hamburger place. And they take a lot of pride in that. So leadership is much easier now. But it's hard to solidify that level 3 with everybody in the organization. But that's your job. You're the leader. Then we go to level 4. Level 4 is the people development level. It's based on reproduction, and people follow you because of what you have done for them. This is where, as you've been loving all your people, you've had to pick out the people that you're going to develop, that you're going to spend a lot of time with, that you're going to pour your life into, that you're going to hopefully have them someday replace you. You're going to groom them to be the leaders to follow you. And you're going to start into people development. It's really, really hard whenever you're a high producer and you're highly competent and you're doing the job, you're getting the hamburgers made, you're getting the customers fed and taken care of, to spend time developing people because you're so deep into the production. Now you've got to divert some time to really try to develop somebody else to do some more. It's hard to make that transition. It's much harder than it was to go from level 2 to level 3, to go from level 3 to level 4. But you have to accept the realization that level 4 is going to be the place where leadership is going to become the easiest. Okay, it's going to be easier to lead at level 4 than it was at level 3, level 2, or level 1. And things really start to hum whenever people get to this level. Now, that same employee, when he's talking to his friends about you and about his job, he's going to say, well, he's got the gold badge, I got the red badge, I got to do what he says because he's the boss. But we got a good relationship, we're tight, we get along, he knows my family, we've been to things together and we get along okay, he cares about me and I know he genuinely cares, and we produce way more than the other shifts, and our customers give us great ratings all the time. We never failed an inspection for cleanliness. We really have a good operation, and he really knows the business. But besides that, I am becoming a better person because of my relationship with him, and I really feel myself growing and becoming a stronger person myself. And I think I could someday maybe do his job if I continue to listen to him, and he continues to take time to mentor me. Okay? When you get to that level, and you got a lot of people at that level, that's smooth as butter. Okay? Now you're really in a leadership position where you can get some things done. It requires a lot of time. It requires a lot of commitment. It requires way more time and way more commitment than level 1. Level 1, being a barn boss, is just you go do that, you go do that, you go do that, and if you don't, I'm going to fire you. Now you're loving on people. Now you're getting involved in people's lives, and you really have to be willing to spend the commitment and the time to do that because that's what's required. Now, we move to the next level, level 5. Level 5 is the pinnacle. And back at level 1, you were given level 1. Okay? You were given level 1 by your superior because he saw potential. You're given level 5 too, but you're given level 5 by the people that you lead. You can't earn level 5 on your own. You get level 5 when the people below you, the people that are following you, give it to you. It's based on respect, and people follow you because of who you are and what you represent. And I like to say, this is where people now, they want to know, where's he working? I want to go work there. Because I know how much I grew under him whenever he was working at ABC Company. And if he's going to XYZ Company, then I'm quitting ABC and I'm going to XYZ because I want to work where that guy works because I know I'm going to keep becoming a better person. The more I follow him, the more he mentors me, the more he cares about me, and the more he leads me. Okay? Very few people get to the pinnacle. I think John Maxwell made it to the pinnacle. I think we've had leaders throughout history that have, but that's whenever leadership is like falling off a log, because the people that really want to follow and the people that really want to grow will cling to you. They will want to get there. And the only way to get to level 5 is by doing level 4 a long time with a lot of people in a lot of different situations in a lot of different environments consistently and repeatedly over and over and over and over and over again. And leadership is about followers. Leadership is about who's behind you that can say, I am where I am because I followed him. So that's the 5 levels. As I said before, I think leadership is a high and holy calling. In my own personal life, I started leading as a kid and led people in the wrong direction. Went to college to be a high school teacher, to lead kids out of the inner city and into a productive life. Didn't get to teach high school. Started in the janitorial business and kind of worked my way up and made a lot of mistakes. And I would say that if I'm a good leader today, it's because of all of the errors that I've made. You learn a lot more by the mistakes you make than you do by the successes you have. I'll give you one last example, and then I'll close. When we were early on in our janitorial business here in Lincoln, I needed supervisors. I needed guys that I could put into a building and let them have the keys and have the relationship and look at the communications log every night and keep the other employees on task and keep things going straight. And I had this guy. He was in the SRI Gallup building over on 68th, just south of O Street. It's now part of the college, or junior college. And he had his wife and another girl and himself cleaning that building. And we had customers in there. We were fairly picky. There was SRI Gallup, and they were pretty picky. But, you know, he seemed like a good, mature guy. And so I made him the supervisor. And he accepted the job because it meant like $1 an hour increase in pay. And he had done really nothing other than, you know, lock the place up at night to show me any kind of responsibility, but he made sure it was locked. And we ran into some problems at the account, and I started, you know, trying to mentor him and drag him along to get this taken care of, get that taken care of, and make sure we were consistent over here. And he got frustrated, and we'd talk, and I'd talk him off the ledge, and he'd get frustrated again, and I'd go back and talk him off the ledge, and he'd keep trying and whatnot. But I could tell this guy was having a hard time, but I didn't have any other options. I didn't have any other options for anybody to put in that building as a supervisor except this kid. And I'm going to say kid, he was probably 22, 23 years old. And one morning I woke up and I had a cassette tape answering machine. And apparently this guy had called during the middle of the night. And for 20 minutes on this cassette tape, called me every name in the book. The one I remember the most was Pond Scum. And just berated me up one side and down the other, and told me that he threw the keys in the trash can at the front door of the building, and I could take them and put them where he, you know, where the sun don't shine, and just went on and on and on and on and on and on and on. And for me, that was an important leadership lesson. The way you murder somebody in the marketplace is insist that they perform something for which they have no response in their repertoire. This guy didn't have a leadership bone in his body, and I was trying to force him to be a leader. He ended up leaving town that night. He and his wife moved back to Tennessee or wherever they were from and left the keys in the trash can. I had to go dig through the trash to find the keys to the building. But for 20 minutes, I listened to that tape, and I listened to it a few times because that was an important lesson for me. And most of my leadership lessons have come from failures, not successes. So thank you for the time. Thank you, Josh, for inviting me to do this. If you have questions, I'll answer them. Any questions? Yes.
Do you think if you're looking at the levels, if you really think about focusing on level 2, even when you do in the beginning of level 1, it's easier to get into level 2 because you're already focusing on building relationships from the very beginning at the same time you're building respect?
Absolutely. I think the moment you get a leadership role, relationships become important. And you want to get out of level 1 as quickly as you possibly can. The gold badge is meaningless. Yeah, Jim? I think the thing that makes leadership much harder now is mission and vision. You know, I am absolutely amazed at how many people have businesses that do not have a stated mission or vision. They expect people to help them get rich. And I can't think of an employee that I've ever worked with in my life that was interested in me getting rich. I can't think of a customer that I ever worked with or a subcontractor that I ever worked with that cared a hoot about how rich I get. But a lot of small business guys, if they make the biggest mistake in leadership for small business is not thinking through why, what, how, and what are my values. Because if you can't say it, you can't do it, and if you can't do it, you certainly can't lead other people to do it. Yes, ma'am.
So that begs the question, taking off of that, if those people have that idea, then you think that's also a lot of the reason that they're having trouble hiring and keeping help.
Absolutely. Absolutely. People, I think most people want to be part of something bigger than themselves. And, you know, the boss getting rich is not big enough. Other questions? Yes, sir.
Like that kid you're trying to develop with a deceptive story. Like he's trying to develop people. I went too far. Like myself, I pushed it too far. How do you know when to hold and when to fold them? Like, how do you know that boundary of okay, like this guy is at level 3, he's not going to be a 4, but he's a great level 3. How do you know?
Well, I think that just takes experience. And again, I would say reflecting. Whenever you have a blow up, you know, take a half hour, evaluate the relationship, try to just marinate in the failure for a little while and try to look at all sides, try to get every perspective. What's his perspective? What would be a third party's perspective if they were looking at your relationship? And what is your perspective? You know, and think through that. See, and whenever I kept getting transferred from hospital to hospital in Service Master, it gave me a great opportunity to do that. I could look at my failures and my wins and say, what happened? And I think that's where development comes through that. I always say reflected on experience is the teacher, not just experience. So you just learn as you go. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I have another one. What are the things you did to build those relationships at level 2?
I think I showed a genuine interest in people. You know, and it's, you can't expect everybody to be interested in the same things you are. But John Maxwell talks about a 1% rule. You find the 1% that you do have in common, and you spend 100% of your time talking about that. You know, you talk about what's important to them. You know, another thing we tried to do in our business, and you know, you talk about incentivizing people and motivating people and helping people grow and develop. One of the things I learned is that whenever you're rewarding people, we would always recognize effort. If someone went above and beyond in their effort but didn't accomplish the goal, we'd recognize the effort publicly. But we would reward results. Okay, if they went above and beyond and actually created some results, then we would reward that with money or, you know, some additional benefit. And one of the things I found is that if you can find something that's unique that person is interested in, for example, we had an employee whose son was in a baseball team, but they didn't have T-shirts. So she was a great employee, and she was always going above and beyond. So we bought her son's baseball team shirts, you know. And that meant a lot to her. That was not like giving her an extra $100 or an extra $50 or whatever, but it was a unique gift to her for her performance, and it made all the difference in the world. And it really strengthened the relationship. You know, I think you got to know your people. Yes? Talk to me. You know, I think that's important. I think it's important to get into a mentoring relationship. I have a couple of mentors in my life right now that I visit on a regular basis, and I tell them what I'm being challenged with and what opportunities I have, and we talk about it. You know, one of the things that I do whenever I work with I do some leadership coaching and consulting, and one of the things I always do is I take that management versus leadership list and try to get people to think, do you have a management problem or do you have a leadership problem? Okay? If your people aren't trained or they don't have the supplies, maybe that's a management problem. Maybe you haven't given them time to learn, or you haven't paid them to go to school or whatever, paid for their schooling. But if it's an attitude issue, maybe it's a leadership problem. You know, and looking at problems and trying to decide what you're actually dealing with. A well-crafted question has its answer buried in it. Any other questions? Yes, sir. Leadership is one of the strengths. Vision is one of the strengths. Communication is one of the strengths. Communication is real important in leadership. If you look at some of the more managerial strengths or artistic strengths that Gallup has, they may not. Everybody can be a leader, but it may be harder for some than it is for others. Okay, it's like basketball. See, I do not have a lot of basketball skills. You know, people say you can be whatever you want to be. I don't think I could be a basketball player, you know, and I don't think I could sing opera, you know. So you got to look at the strengths that you have, and does it relate to leadership? And I think that's a good way to deal with employees is look at their Gallup strengths. Are they a potential, you know, because everybody can learn it. The problem is, do you have the time to work with them? See, I would take a person that's already got leadership and communication and maximizer kinds of talents and work with them to be a leader before I would look at some other people with other talents. You know, if they're detail oriented, you know, maybe they're more of a manager or an accountant or something. So, any other questions? Well, thanks, guys. I'm done.